First, I'm taking 2 of the Dollar Tree haunted house signs. So first I started out painting these houses with some black paint that I thinned down with some water to make sort of a stain. Then I decided that I didn't want the house to look this dark, so I went in with some of the Waverly chalk paint in white, and I just painted a little bit onto the house, and then I went in with a wet wipe, or you could also use a damp paper towel, and I just started to kind of use that as a paintbrush by just wiping the paint all over the house in a thin layer. I didn't want it to be too bright of a white, so I was going for that sort of faded, worn down look. It kind of gave it like a really light gray color. After the paint dried, I'm taking 2 of these small craft sticks from the Dollar Tree, and I cut them down to about 1.5 inches long, giving me 4 pieces. Then I'm going to hot glue the 2 pieces together side by side. And I will do the same with the other 2. Now if you wanted to paint these first, you can. I honestly didn't even think to do that until later, and you'll see that later in the video. So now I'm going to give the house a porch, and to do that, first I'm going to take these 2 pieces and hot glue them to each side of the top of the door to give it a roof. Now I'm taking another craft stick and I'm going to cut a small piece to add to the top of the roof. Then I'm taking 2 of the tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to give the porch some steps. I'm hot gluing 1 piece directly onto the house just under the door. Then the next one I'm going to glue to the first step by adding a bead of hot glue across the back of the block. Then placing the house to where the first step lines up to the top edge of the second block and overlapping it just a bit. Next, I'm going to use a craft stick to make shutters for a couple of the windows. And I want the shutters to look broken and like they could fall off at any moment. So to make the shutters look broken, I'm just going to be cutting the stick in half. So it makes like this uneven, splintered kind of look. I'm just going to attach those to the house on one of the lower windows, and I will do the same to the upper middle window. Now I'm taking these blocks that I made by gluing 3 of the tumbling tower blocks together side by side. I made 2, and I'm going to start attaching them to the back of the house on the inside. I'm adding a bead of glue and then placing it on the middle, lining it up along the outside edge of the house. Then doing the same with the other side. I didn't paint these, but you can if you want. Now I'm going to take the front of the house and I will be attaching it by adding hot glue on the blocks. Then standing the back of the house up and lining the front of the house up so that it's even with the back. I hope that makes sense. Now I'm taking the large craft sticks from the Dollar Tree and I cut the rounded ends off. I will be gluing them across the top of the house to make a roof. Now I'm finally ready to paint the pieces that I forgot to paint. By using a little bit of gray paint, I added some water to it to thin it out to make a stain. I painted the steps, the roof, and the shutters with this color. So this is what the house looks like after everything is painted. Next, I'm taking a skewer from the Dollar Tree and I will be cutting it down to give the porch some columns. I'm just going to be painting the skewer stick with that same gray color. Now I'm adding glue to each end of the skewers and then placing them on the bottom step and up to the roof. Next I'm going to add the large craft sticks to the top of each peak on the roof, and I did cut off the rounded ends of these craft sticks. Now I'm going to be taking this wood snake from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to be painting this snake to look like a sandworm. To do that, first I'm going to start painting the head and I'm using Waverly chalk paint in white, but you can use any white paint that you want. So now I'm going to be giving the sandworm stripes, and to do that I will be counting over 6 of these little segmented sections. Starting with the white, I will be painting 6 of the sections and then alternating every other 6 with the white paint until I get to the very end near the tail, and there will be 3 of these little sections left that will be painted white. Next, I will be painting the remaining sections of the snake black. Now I'm taking some red paint, and you will need a tiny paintbrush for this. I'm going to be painting the eyes. I'm using Waverly acrylic paint in the color crimson, but you can use any red paint you want. With that same tiny brush, I'm going to give the sandworm some teeth using black paint, and I'm just painting little triangles all around the mouth. Don't worry if it looks a little messy and uneven, it doesn't have to be perfect. Next, I will be using a little of the foam sheets from Dollar Tree. I wanted white, but this was all my store had. I just cut out 2 triangle shapes and I rounded the tips. They are about 1.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches long. And since they are purple, I will be giving them 3 coats of white paint. I used Waverly chalk paint. If you have white foam sheets, then you don't have to worry about this step. You can skip this step. But since mine were purple, I did have to paint them. After the white paint is dry, I'm turning them over and I'm painting the other side black. It only took 1 coat. When they're dry, I'm going to take black paint and add a couple of stripes. Starting at the tip, make sure to get the edges. Then adding 1 more at the bottom. Now I'm taking a little bit of red paint in that same tiny paintbrush, and one of the triangles I'm going to give it eyes. This will be the top of the worm's head. Next, I'm going to be taking a little square piece of that foam. This is probably about an inch wide by 1 inch long, so it's about a 1 by 1. And I'm just cutting sort of a crooked triangle out of that, and this is going to be the fin to the sandworm. And then I will be giving it 1 coat of black paint on both sides. Next, I'm going to take the triangle without the eyes and place it on the bottom of the head of the worm. I'm just bringing up the sides to see where I need to trim a little of it off. And once I get that where I want it, I'm going to be taking some hot glue and just running a small bead on the bottom edge of the triangle. And then I'll be placing the worm on top of that. And then I will be doing the same thing with the top of the worm's head. I'm just placing it over the top to see where I need to trim it. And then I'll be attaching it with some hot glue. Now I'm going to be attaching the fin with a little hot glue at the base of the head. Now I'm going to be attaching the sandworm to the top of the house by adding a line of hot glue across the top peak and then placing the top half of the worm. And then I'm going to start curving the worm down the side of the roof and attaching it with a little hot glue. And here is how the Beetlejuice inspired haunted house turned out. You can always add some fairy lights or a couple of tea lights to the inside if you want. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. Bye.